Imagine, if you will, a completely useless and irrelevant podcast. You don't have to. You've downloaded this one, where two of the three hosts are connected by a third who isn't nearly as smart or funny as they are, but yet does most of the talking. Biff, the smart one, a Japanese native and resident of California by way of Toronto, is a computer programmer, yet is plagued by tech issues most episodes. Biff has played hockey with Jacques since the late 90s. But if Biff is so smart, why does he continue to co-host this podcast? Joe, considered by all who know him, including all the comedian guests they've had, to be the funniest person they know. Yet Joe says the only funny thing about him is his life is a joke. Gifted or cursed, you decide, with encyclopedic knowledge of video games, game shows, and 80s sitcoms. Then there's Jacques. What can be said about Jacques he won't say about himself repeatedly over the course of this episode, as he has every episode before of this Batman Forsaken podcast. The signpost up ahead says turn around, stop listening, but you're still here. Sad. You've just crossed over into the Carnival Personnel Podcast Zone. I'm dumb.
Google like top 10 things to do in the town. Tonight we're in Portsmouth. I Googled the top 50 things. Nowhere in the 50 things was there. Go to a crazy roundabout. Find the best Western. Find a diner in the north wing of the Best Western. Go through the diner to an unlabeled door in the back of the diner. There'll be one Puerto Rican performing comedy there. You guys have made it to the right place.
Hello, welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
I'm glad that you last week, Joe, were able to go to McHugh's third anniversary show up at the Roundabout in Portsmouth, because otherwise you wouldn't have met in person this week's guest, who I've known for about a year. We have a lot of the same friends. I mean, it's a very small circle, but the smaller circle that he runs in with his podcast partners, Tommy Wires and Jay, really fantastic guys. Three of the nicer guys, three very funny guys, but also three of the most supportive guys in the community. And as I've lamented a number of times, the great friends that I've met in this community, the mentors, and how supportive it is. And for every one of our guests, it makes you overlook the 10 guys who show up at an open mic 2 minutes before they go on, and as they're handing the mic back to the host, they're hitting the exit. You know, these are the guys who stay. These are the guys who show up at shows they're not part of. These are the guys who are just really, really overall the better side of the community. You know, I put them up there with the Anthony and Wayne from Open Mic Pain. So last week at the show, it was great that you got to meet them. So we'll just bring them on right now. A huge Carnival Personnel Sideshow welcome for our comedic friend and brother, Mystaru.
Hello, how you guys doing today?
No, we were doing great.
Yeah.
And it was nice seeing you last week. Wink.
Yes.
Anyways, we'll get right into it. So, Mr.
I don't know how I'm going to live up to that intro.
Well, you can't.
But seriously, there's so many shows. You know, I like comedy, so I'll go to shows if the home, you know, the stuff around the house, the kids or the wife, if I have a free Thursday, Friday, Saturday. If I have a show on Thursday and Saturday, I'm not going out on Friday. I'm not going to be a dick. But right. If I don't have a couple things booked and, I know a couple people in Manchester, you know, Dave Radican has a show up there and I know the headliner and there's a couple people on the undercard. I like, Jim has this going on. You know, I go, and there's so many times I've seen you. One thing I forgot to throw in the credits. This was your first year competing in the Boston Comedy Festival.
Yes, that was an awesome time. We saw each other. You were there every night of that. I only performed on Monday night, but I was more than honored to be accepted as a participant in that. And what an awesome week that was.
It really was. Yeah, I and Joe was there 2 or 3 nights because we were helping Jim do his live stream. And as you saw before we started recording, yes, I'm completely useless, and Joe can.
I know
fix
one
everything.
thing. I know one thing. That's how to change your name on a Zoom.
You did, you nailed it.
So we'll get to the comedy festival in a bit, but let's take a step back. Your background before comedy was in the hip hop rap world, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you're not mistaken. That's where the Mystaru name came from. I was a rapper in high school, dancer, break dancer in high school, DJ for a while because rapping and dancing didn't make you money, but DJs got paid. And I DJ'd up into the point that the iPod came out. And once the iPod came out, everyone became a DJ overnight. And I was lugging around 12-inch records.
Right to
And the
Goodwill.
pay, yeah. The pay scale went down when anyone that had $500 can be a pro DJ by the next morning, you know. So I kind of got out of that and took a break for a long time, and then came back as a comic. And, I missed the stage, I guess.
Well, let's go back to the being a rapper and the breakdancer. First of all, is breakdancing to Electric Boogaloo the greatest name of a sequel in the history of movies?
Well, the
Breaking.
Boogaloo, I guess Breaking, but that was the like mainstream movie. Everyone that was into that was into like Fresh Groove and Beat Street.
Yes.
Those were like the street movies, with the real stuff, I guess, not the drama in Hollywood. But yeah, I mean, it was still good dancing, but the movie was a little, love story connected.
I was introduced to breakdancing on a very special episode of Eight is Enough. Very little scene episode. Dick Van Patten can do the worm like no one else.
What about Rerun? Remember Rerun?
Yes.
Remember Rerun, dude. If my knees and shoulders are loud, look, I'm going to put this out there. When I'm on my deathbed, hopefully soon, the biggest regret in my life will have been I never learned to do the rerun dance. The one thing I will take to my grave, shitty parenting, sure, that's up there. The girls who I pushed to the side who would have made my life so much easier because he came from phenomenal wealth, sure, that's up there. But the fact that I didn't learn to do the rerun dance will be my greatest regret in life.
If you can't touch your toes, you can't do the rerun dance because he has those kicks.
Yeah.
So I know I can't do them.
Yes, around the world.
I could not dance in a million years. I mean, I never have. I had a couple friends who were breakdancers, and honestly, the athleticism in that is pretty phenomenal. How good were you?
Pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. We were in a group called the Circle Children. We traveled, as a kind of a group, and it was like the Eat Street thing. We battled without being like, nothing became fights or whatever, but your group would show up and another group would show up. And then hip hop clubs kind of died at the same time that raves kicked off. So the breakdancing groups would end up turning into house dancers and kind of like rave dancers. And then we'd end up going to raves only to dance. Like those raves were kind of a bad scene with the drug world, but like you would always see breakdancing crews at the raves.
Did you have
public access? Is there a public access video of your group breakdancing?
Oh,
like like one of those dance party kind of shows.
I might be able to scoop something up. I know there's definitely 8mm high def Leechmere camcorder stuff of us practicing. Whether I want those to get out in the open or not, I don't know. But Leechmere, I'd have to roll 8mm film over to like somehow get it on YouTube, But,
that is awesome. Did you have a signature move? What was the Mystaru like? Oh, he's going to break this out, and they're going to, just lose their shizzle.
So as a group, we had like, like UFC has a weight class for fighters. In the dancing world, we had like dancers on their feet versus dancers that were good, like like on the ground with groundwork, windmills, worms, that type of stuff. Like nowadays, if you watch like a Red Bull breakdancing competition, like forget about it. These kids are like they took it they took it like X Games took BMX bike riding, you know. But back then it was like I was a on my feet guy, like I wasn't a floor guy, you know.
Did you
I could
have
do
a
some stuff down there, but I was like a floor guy.
Did you have a name like did everybody have their own like stage name? Like, did you go by
Yeah,
something back then?
mine's was just Mystaru. Yeah,
Oh, all right,
yeah,
right, all the way
yeah,
back then. Nice.
yeah.
You
And
know,
I got that name in '91, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So if you know one of my jokes, it's from Dunkin' Donuts. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts in high school, and when I worked there, one of the kids who I'm still friends with today, if anyone wants to look him up, I don't know if I want to throw this plug, but it's Donnie Def Rock Maker. He's the one that does all the graffiti that you'll notice in the back of my podcast, and he's the one that gave me that name. Back in the '90s, everyone was Doctor, like Dr. Dre, Doctor this, Doctor that, and he said there's no Misters.
Hmm.
So my last name was Ruiz. They mixed it with Mister, and then he came up with Mister Ru, drew it up the way that it's spelled there on the screen, and kind of like stuck with me ever since.
that is
I was
awesome. So
I was
wait,
thinking of going by Nurse Joe, but nobody, you know,
uh,
it wasn't as progressive back then, you know. They weren't
No, no,
open-minded.
no. Yeah.
is it any truth to the rumor that Ben Affleck based his Duncan persona on you?
The DunKings. Oh
So-
yeah,
shit!
no.
You should be like one of the background guys for the fucking DunKings.
I don't know. But so that commercial when they made that stick with the munchkins on it has probably got me more messages than any comedy joke I've ever done. Like, look what like they came back out. So my joke, which I don't want to give away, the punchline is a real thing that happened in 1996 at I that's real. That
Yep.
thing I made is real.
And you didn't copyright
Um,
that like the guy. There was just a
no,
documentary on the guy who invented. Was it Cool Ranch Doritos or some guy just
Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
Flame on Hot Cheetos? Is that it? That,
I don't know.
a guy. There was a documentary on a guy in SoCal. Latino
Yeah.
guy, and he used to make his Doritos like extra spicy, and then he went to them with the idea, like he patented and went to them with the idea, and it's a great
Yeah,
story.
I think it
but,
was Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Yeah.
but yeah, when you
Flamin'
bust,
Hot Cheetos is like something that will fly off the shelves. If you guys know the punchline to my joke, I don't think my thing, which sold well in 1996, I don't think it's going to sell well 2024.
Or it could still sell well in New Hampshire. I mean, come on, guys.
One state. If anyone wants it, they have to come cross the border into New Hampshire to buy it.
Yeah, like fireworks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
did you also rap, and what was your rap history?
My rap history was the same guy that gave me my name was my producer. He was a beat maker, had a studio in Portsmouth. I think I made like 6 or 7 songs solo, which how lost on MySpace. Somewhere in MySpace world, I had all these songs on there, and I was, and then I can only find like 3 of them. And the only reason why you can find 3 is if you Google Mystaru, there's still a Reverb Nation page somehow with one of my songs on it, which is funny.
I wonder if for the Wayback Machine. Do you know about the Wayback Machine on the internet? It's
No.
so if you go to archive.org, here's a tip for everybody.
Oh, here we go.
There's a thing called the Wayback Machine where you put in the web address or search engine into the Wayback Machine, and what it does is if they had if this website had taken a snapshot of your MySpace page, it'll pop up. Like they kind of archive it. It's kind of like an archive of old internet pages. So
Yeah, well, back then, like MySpace was easy because it was just like myspace.com
yeah,
forward or backslash like your name. So for
Yeah.
me, it would just be / Mr. Roos. Like, like that comic Dane Cook blew up on MySpace. Like I doubt he lost all of his past stuff. I
yeah.
don't know like how you get, but I'll try that for sure.
Our listeners, that's your mission to find Mr.
Okay.
Rue's past works.
Let's do
Well,
it.
well,
if you do find it, send it to me because I want it myself.
you
Will
could reach
do.
out to your old friend on MySpace, Tom, and maybe ask him
Tom.
if he, maybe Tom still
Tom's
has
on
it.
an island somewhere. He's not taking messages from anybody.
It will go down as one of the greatest tweets of all time. And if do you know the tweet I'm talking about, Joe?
No.
Where he commented on something, there's like 6, 7, 7, 8 years after MySpace went away. And somebody replied, it's like, why are we going to listen to a guy who, had a failed like website? And he wrote back, it's like, by failed, you mean I sold it for $428 million? Yeah.
He went back into hiding. He just dropped that tweet, went back into hiding.
Yes.
It is an all-time classic. Okay, so when did you get back? When did you say, you know what? I miss the spotlight that breakdancing and rapping gave me. Comedy's blowing up. I can do this and get back into the game.
At the absolute worst month in history, February 2019, I decided to sign up for a Laugh Boston University class with the amazing Tony V. We all know Tony. Oh, the best. Tony, if you're out there listening, thank you so much. And then COVID hit the next month, so they put off that class until I think the middle of 2020 or the middle of 2021. So I just wrote jokes for 2 years, and they were going to do a Zoom class. I wanted to see Tony in person, so I waited till the in-person classes came back, signed up for the first session, drove down to Boston every Wednesday night, then drove back on like Thursdays and Fridays for open mics, and stayed with him for 24 weeks. Did all 3 sessions, and was kind of like my launch into like taking the class with Tony V was like bittersweet. Number one, Tony's the man. Everyone knows that. But when you take a class with him, you're nervous for Wednesday night because you're performing in front of him and your class, and obviously he knows you're a new comic. But for me, being the age I was at, like I didn't take that class till 44 and a half years old or whatever. And like I know who Tony is, I know what his resume is like. So it's very like obviously he knows you're new, but you also want to impress him because you're performing in front of like one of the best, And I was in a class where there was only 2 people my age. The rest were all college kids that I don't even know if they knew who Tony were. No slight on Tony, but they were just like, oh, a comedy class. And I'm like, you guys know who this is, right? Like, he was on Seinfeld. He's in The Town. He's in like these movies, And they're like, oh.
They're like, who? What?
Yeah. They're like,
Seinfeld.
we think we think we want to try this. We think we want to do improv. And I'm like, no, like comedy's like what I want. And I went up to Tony, who was the most approachable, nicest guy. And I just said, if you need to hammer me. Like my thing is I'm not young. I can deal with, constructive criticism, and he gave it to me.
No,
He gave it to me in a way that would help, because it's like Tony's number one thing, or any comedy classes, they can't teach you to be funny. That's what they can teach you, the tricks of getting up to a mic, how to perform at a like. They can't teach you to be funny. They can tell you how to write a joke, can't tell you how to deliver, And Tony was very honest with that. And like, if you took Tony's class thinking like it's going to be easy or it's going to be like come quick to, like he let you know, like there's going to be long rides, there's going to be horrible shows, there's going to be 2 hours in the car to perform for 6 people, like all up front. Like, and you didn't even know that until you got into that class. So like everything he said came true. Every single thing he said came true. So that's what you take the class for, more than like, oh, here's how to break down a joke. Here's how to be funny. More like, don't do this, don't do that. You shouldn't do this. But he's like, enjoy it, man.
Yeah, less about the science of comedy, but more about the business side, or more about the environment. Yeah,
exactly, the environment, which can get you wrapped up in, everyone has their own pace. Someone that starts tomorrow could take off in 4 months just because age group is one thing. Material is another thing, and something Tony didn't have that we all have is social media. So, could, like you could get no views on your Facebook or Instagram, but you're like famous on TikTok, or vice versa. Like I'm older in age than most of these TikTok people. So like I kind of pick and choose where I put my stuff, and I'm just trying to grind and stay busy. Get on the everyone sees the shows you're on, but no one sees that you sent out, your tape to 15 bookers and only 3 of them got back to you. And, that's the business, right?
Well, when you talk about the Tony class and the stuff about not being funny, there's a guy who's been on a podcast, a really good friend, Dante the Comic. He puts out on average 1 or 2 videos a week where it's like, here's comedy tips, and he's up to like 272. None of it is about joke writing. It's all here's because if you want to be a working comic, being funny is 5 to 10% of it. The rest of it is sending out all those tapes, how to get, in with bookers, all these things, how to, and when you have somebody like Tony who's working on that side of it, telling you, here, you got to work on your persona, or if you have this look, because I know he's big on, if you're a guy who wears a hat, be the guy who wears a hat, but don't wear a hat and then not wear a hat, and then these kind of things. And if you have a teacher who's telling you, oh, Maru, you're great, you just keep going, and you're not developing, he's not helping you. So the more brutal they are and the more honest they are, I started doing this, one-on-one thing with Mike Petrobis a few months ago. And the first session was probably the worst hour of my time. I mean, literally, it was absolutely grueling and hard. The hardest thing is, and I'll ask you, describe your comedy and your persona in a sentence. And it's like, well, I kind of do this and I kind of do that. It's like, well, until you can say what that is, but as the more brutal he got, the more it made me go back and look at everything I've ever done and say, oh, I see. It was a huge step back to take a couple leaps forward. So if Tony was grilling you, and that's the other thing, if they're taking the time to get to know you and your comedy and are specific with, you need to work on this versus addressing the whole class at once. It's like pacing or time. There's so many things you can address a room with, but if he's taking the time to say, Maru, you should think about this, or when you do this, you're leaving out this. So is that where you met Lauren Sims? Because we know a bunch of people who've taken his classes, and all of them said the same thing, that he's such a nice guy. But when it came down to the teaching aspect, it's like, yeah, he wasn't a nice guy. He was like, he was nice, but he's like truthful. Honest. Right.
Right. And same thing with Mike Petrobis. Mike is telling you that stuff. I've worked with Mike before. I know people have taken Mike's classes, and I know that they will still send him like a video for like a breakdown, and he'll break it down honestly, which is just helping you and helping comedy, because these guys have been in it for 30 years, maybe even longer for some of them. I know Mike, he's close to 30 years. I think Tony's over 40. For them to just say like, hey, great job, like that doesn't really help you, so like for those guys to break it down and for you to take that feedback and work off it is awesome. I do have to change one thing though. You said being funny is only 5 to 10% of it. I don't agree with that. If you're 90% funny and you don't know how to do anything in the background, like one of Tony's things was, I don't want to quote this, but he's like, when you're ready, people will reach out to you.
Right.
Like when you're funny enough that like your name is out there, like more calls will come to you than you have to reach out. So like the 10 to 5% thing, like if you're 90% funny and you stink at networking, you're probably going to get work because you're 90% funny.
Right. But then you're getting work. Do you know how to do your taxes? Do you know how? No, because like literally, I didn't realize this till I started working in sports. NBA players and, every pro sports players, they have to file state taxes. In every state they've played a game. And I was like, wait, what? Like, even if you play, you play on the Patriots and you play one game in Cleveland, that year have to file state taxes in the state. So when I talk about the 90%, it's all, and that's the stuff with, when Dante the comic picks out, like stuff you just talked about, the long car ride. So I know, like, you and Tommy, you got a Friday night in New York, and one or two of you had a connection in Philadelphia. So you're going to do a 3-day trip. He puts out tips like, if there's 2 or 3 comics in the car, decide before you get in the car who's doing the driving. Who's a bad backseat driver? You guys select different music. How you go? Like, there's all those little things that go into it.
So the DJ,
when I'm talking about like being a working comic, it's the whole ubra of it
Oh
being,
yeah,
being
yeah.
funny is if I say it's 10%, it's like it might be the most important 10%. But
I was told
Right.
there would be no comedy math in this
I
podcast.
okay,
No.
we will move on. So
He's talking about taxes.
You're
yeah.
right.
Well, no, it's because, and again, this is one of those things where Dave Radigan, once a year, he has a friend of his who's a CPA come to the Winter Circle to run a class
Yep.
on this. If you're a comic, this is how you now need to do your taxes. These are the things that, here's the money you might be leaving on the table. Here's the stuff you can deduct. Here's the stuff you think you can deduct, but you can't. But all of that goes into being a working comic. And the fact that, again, there's somebody like Radigan out there who's willing to help
And
dumb
take that
fucks like
class.
us. Right.
If you're a comic that doesn't have an accountant that does that for you, take that class. Radigan put me in that class 2 years ago. I've been using that guy for 2 years.
Isn't it fantastic? Right.
It's
And
it's changed. It's that 10%. You know, I don't want to get into comedy taxes, but he knows how to do those. So
right.
like
one of my
like
favorite
TurboTax is going to give you the
ain't gonna
option
help
for
you.
comedian.
No. One of my
I want
favorite
to know
quotes.
how good was the CPA crowd work? You know, like did they?
Oh yeah.
Sure, he knows taxes, but
Yeah, right. No, he doesn't get on stage. He's a wealth manager. He's a accountant, and he does.
yeah,
He-
his
he-
socials
I think
aren't
he's-
blowing up. Yeah,
Yeah, no.
he's not posting enough clips online.
But it turns out he is a great ground guy with breakdancing. Very few people know that.
Oh.
His groundwork is second. You know whose groundwork?
He's joining the crew.
You know whose groundwork? And none of us will ever get to see it because it's way in the rearview mirror.
I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
Liam Hales.
Oh, for real?
Really, like he has a whole bit about he was a Division I college football recruit who blew out both his knees doing the worm at a school dance like 2 days before like the biggest game of the year. But he was a break that 6'6", you know, and even in high school he was 275 pushing 300. But
If he
he
blew
was
up both knees during the worm, doing the worm, he was no
Yeah.
dancer. He was like I could blow out both knees doing the worm right
You know-
now.
You know what? I will let you take that up with him in the alley
Yeah,
behind the roundabout on
Yeah,
next
yeah.
Saturday. You know, I'm gonna text him now to let him know you want to talk about this.
I'll challenge him to a dance off. I don't give a fuck.
Show up as Nurse Joe.
Yes.
You can help him out.
Absolutely.
Let him go first.
I got
That's
the
all you
rubber
gotta
gloves
do.
and everything.
So now let's get back into your comedy. So you take the class. Going into the class, did you know I want to be a storyteller? I want to be a joke teller. I want to have a persona. Did you know going in kind of
I had
what
a
you
pers-
wanted?
I had a persona that was basically changed by the time I ended class. And Tony's thing was until you take the stage, you know, X amount of times, let's say 1,000 times, you're not going to come into like what sticks for you, what people, you know, take as your vibe. You think you do, you know, you're like, oh, I want to dress nice and wear a sport coat. But if your comedy doesn't match that, for me, I had like Hango hats. That's like kind of like my thing. Now I started like the last 4 or 5 shows I've done, you know, doing my hair. And people don't notice me. When I walk in, they're like, oh, you're not wearing a hat. It's like the first thing they say. And I'm like, it's like, so is it a gimmick or was it just me? And I don't, my goal is not what everyone else's goal. Like a lot of comics say in comedy, say, if you get to this, it's like where comics go to die. I'm retiring from my day job within the next 7 or 8 months. So my goal is to be a cruise ship comic in the next, say, like 4 to 5 years. I know it's like a long path to get there. So I have 3 or 4 buddies that are cruise ship comics, as well as McHugh's one. So I can get info from them. I know I'm not even close to being that. So anyone that's watching this knows I've only been in comedy for 4 years. So I know I got a ways to go. So, but that's the goal, which is not many comics' goals, you know, but that's what mine is.
Start being a tour guide comic first, you know, like just like doing the
Yeah.
duck boat tours.
Yeah, dude, you got to start
No,
somewhere.
actually,
I'll
no,
be a Blues Cruise.
There'll
Blues
be a
Cruise
tour.
comic.
There'll be a tour guide, and then you're just like there as a comic. It's just wait a second, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, there's a female comic that is, I don't want to say names because I don't know if she wants, but she's a female comic. She's a headliner. She was a duck boat driver, and she used to do comedy over the headset to
Yeah.
the people that are on the boat. So like
Absolutely.
wherever you can deliver jokes or deliver laughs, people are willing to take it, you know.
Well,
Yes.
I've seen now. I don't know if it's the Duck Boat people or it's a rival company, but there's different tours where it is specifically comics. Doing different like
Yes.
the graveyard tours, the Duck
There's
Boat
the
tours,
trolley, the
right.
comic trolley. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yep.
that is all out there. So you went in thinking you were going to try to go down this road. It's shaped by the time you get out of there. So what do you think? Where would you say your comedy is now, and not just where you hope it to go goal wise, but
Yeah.
like your comedy overall? Like, who are the people that you're like, yeah, I would like to kind of be put in that category? Like, who are the comics that you liken yourself to?
This isn't gonna make sense, but like my favorite comics are like Ricky Gervais and Bill Burr, but I want to be the clean version of that. Like self-deprecating, kind of like I hate the world, but I'm calling them out on like changes in the world you don't like, you know, from, say like growing up in the 80s and 90s to what is normal in 2024. And I'm not talking like political stuff or things like that. I just mean like, things we missed or the things of how your parents raised you compared to how being a parent now is so much different. Obviously, being on a cruise ship, you got to be clean. So I write almost all my stuff clean, and then I can change it if I don't want to be clean. Easier than writing dirty and then scaling back. Um, so Boston comedy, I did a clean set. A clean set got me into Boston Comedy Festival. So like that's that I kind of made a choice to stay clean. It's helped me, I think.
No, I could not agree more.
I just realized I dropped the F word like 8 times on this podcast so far, so I'm going to clean up my act. All right. I'm sorry. If you could just edit out all of that, all the curse words from, yeah.
Get one. Now I so want to go through the podcast and just start randomly beeping things you say.
You shouldn't. You know what you should do is when you edit this, every time he says it, put a number up in the corner, like 3, like 4,
a little
then 5.
counter.
Yes.
Yeah, keep a counter,
The curse counter.
F-bomb counter.
So how much material do you think you have now? Like if you had to do 40, could you do 40? Do you have a
No.
solid 20?
20 to 30. If I do crowd work at the beginning, which like the last show you saw me at was 3 to 5 minutes of crowd work at the front, I always like to pick the town that I'm in, and I'll do 2 to 3 minutes up front about the town that I'm in. The show you guys saw me on, I did a joke about the venue. It's kind of like my icebreaker. I always write that, and then I go into, my stuff. So in the upcoming week, I've done 20 to 25 minutes, like 4 or 5 times. I'm doing a 25 to 30-minute set at the Portsmouth City Music Hall Lounge coming up. So there'll be a test. I'm gonna, same thing. Start off with probably 3 to 4 minutes of crowd work and venue work, and then go into my set.
So when you
And it'll be all clean.
that you know what I don't a lot of and it's a lot of the younger kids we know have trouble working clean.
Mhm.
It's a look. You don't have to work clean. Ask
No.
Lenny Clark. Ask Steve
Oh, yeah.
Sweetie. But if you're where you are, it does open more doors. To
Yes.
to be able to for people to be able to plug you into different places. Because there was. I was on my way to a Radican show maybe 6-7 months ago, and he calls and says, "The opener can't make it. Do you know somebody who has a clean-ish 5?" He doesn't want you to work clean, but he doesn't want the stuff you're going to see at the awful open mics with people who are trying
Oh,
to, the bestiality, pedophilia, diarrhea, 5-minute set of that. They don't, but and I had to think, it's like, wow, who do I know who can get here in the next hour?
Yeah, right.
Who also has 5, and it was a very small list of people, I could call, because of that. So the Boston Comedy Festival.
Welcome me into the Boston Comedy Festival was an 8-minute set I did for 280 people at a church.
Wow.
So like not even, you couldn't even use the word ass. It was 100% clean, but 280 people, they loved it. So that was the audition tape I sent to BCF.
That is fantastic. And tell us about like the whole experience. Like, what did you do to prep to get ready for it? How did you pick the 5 minutes you were going to do? How hard did you work to make sure you were only at five? Because if you go over five in an open mic, yeah, you're kind of a dick. But no, you're not going to get marked down for it.
You don't lose points, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Everyone that told me that was in, have a couple comics that were in it before. A couple headliners reached out to me that actually won it. They just said you're better to go 440 than you are to go 502. So you take I took an 8-minute set and cut it down to 440, zero crowd work because I don't have time for it. And it was just, you're trying to get a couple. This is what I went into it thinking. I want a couple short jokes to get the laughs quick, and then I want a couple of story jokes. I'm more of a storyteller, and I don't know if that worked for me or against me. But that's what got me there. I wasn't going to try to change it. When you go up there and you see a short, not like a Stephen Wright, but someone that can just not tell stories. It's like bang bang. Like you understand how they move on. Like it's hard to get 25 laughs in 5 minutes or whatever the timing is. And for me to compete with that I'm not that tight. But I mean, I was there. So you either win or you're in. I was in, so I love being there. It was an awesome experience. I didn't know going in. I'm like, this is my best five. This is what I have. And it's up to the judges and the crowd. The crowds at every single show were awesome. I went to every show but one night because I had to work one night. I drove down there 5 out of the 6 nights. Saw you there a lot.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I love production. I come from a production background.
Yeah.
And since the pandemic, I haven't, done anything where it's a 6-day, 12-hour a day production gig. And I absolutely, I really liked every bit of it. And at the same time, the number of great people that I met, actually seeing how the machine works from the inside. Because our last 3 guests were the 2 co-champions, and then Joseph Katz, who, if there was a bronze medal given out, I think he would have got it. Really, okay. And we've talked about this, so many times on the podcast. But when Joe and I were working that final show, as we were walking downstairs, I don't know if I said I think it's Casey, but it could be Scanora, and he was like, I think it's Scanora, but it could be Casey. We pretty much figured they were going, one of those was going to win. But Katz, so it was a great experience overall. And what I didn't know is how far reaching it is, because the people I would just be talking to came in from Vancouver. Oh, yeah. No other reason but this, who came down from Ottawa, people who aren't from LA but are living in LA, who came back for this. There was one girl, I want to say she was from Sweden or Denmark. Oh, and she went to the second round, but same thing. She's been in LA for 8 months, 9 months at this point. She heard about the festival, she got in and came here just for that. It wasn't just a regional thing.
No. If you know about the Boston Comedy Festival, is probably in the top 5 comedy festivals, maybe in the country or the world. Just in my round, there was a girl from Connecticut, a guy from Texas, a guy from Brooklyn, New York, a guy from the Bronx, New York. And I was talking to him. These people show up solo, hotel room, giving it a shot, spending money, betting on themselves. And they were like, this is big for me. When I go home and I start using BCF as it's good for promoters. Bookers know how hard it is to get in. Did you and Joe you were there every night, right?
Joe was there 3 nights.
I was there for about 3 nights. I was there for the finals. Yeah.
Did you watched how tough the competition was? There was no one that shouldn't be there.
Right.
It was.
No, there was me. I was the one that shouldn't have been there. But no, as far as comics go, comics go, no, everybody was on point. And I was floored by the I mean, and then I saw the finals and the level of the, that's the cream of the crop right there. But even first round, people were just legit, so yeah.
Well, what surprised me, here's one of the bigger things that surprised me. I saw is it Chris Tabb, who I've seen as a headliner. He is the host down at the Gillette Stadium Comedy Club. I don't know what it's called, but Chris Tobin owns that one.
Something.
Yeah. But it's a John Tobin club, and I've seen him headline, and he was competing. I thought he was there like,
yeah.
oh, is he hosting tonight? But I thought,
No.
Wazowski was hosting, and it's like, oh crap, I didn't know you have these regional headliners, people who have done Foxwoods, people who have done Mohegan Sun, coming in and whittling it down from
Casey Crawford, who was one of the co-winners, was on Jimmy Kimmel in 2017 or 18. So like,
Yeah.
it's legit competition, man. Like, I was just happy to be there. I hate this like, I'm not in it for a participation award. Like, honestly, I wanted to move on, and I'll apply next year, and hopefully I get accepted again and try to move. But like, to be there is huge. I mean, I think they only picked 55 comics out of all the applicants. I don't know the exact number, but when I went up, it was like, okay, I can see out of the, I don't know if there was 12 people per round, I forget now, but like only 2 of these people get to move on. Like,
right.
the judges don't have it easy. It isn't like one person just excelled and the other 11 bombed. Like, it was a good, and then to go to the finale and watch the 8 at the end for a sold out Berkeley Center with over 1,200 people, like that was awesome. And
Yeah,
Casey and Angelica, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, they tore that place out.
I mean,
Even as a comic, watching another comic, I'm like, I thought the same thing. Like, it has to be one of those two. The way the crowd responded to them, the judges, they couldn't ignore it.
and like you said, Casey, had got Kimmel. The interesting thing is he got Kimmel. What did he say, Joe? Like in the first year and a half of doing comedy.
Yeah. I think he had a little bit of an in, but still, he wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't green. Like, it wasn't like, who's this guy?
No.
Why is he on stage? Yeah.
Well,
Right,
because Maru, like you and I, he got into comedy.
Wait, time out. Stop. His name is Mystaru. Maru is the name of your dog. All right. So you gotta.
I go by Rue though. I thought he was just saying Rue. Rue, I answer to.
I'm sorry.
Maru is just weird.
Well, it is a little weird, but Kobayashi Maru, which is the test that Spock invented to test Starship pilot or commanders. See, what it is, but look up Kobayashi Maru. It's a great story. But one of the things is, Casey started late. He was in his mid-30s, met his wife. They went to college, and they kind of stuck around. A comedy scene broke out in like the college town of Nebraska, and
Midwest.
he first year he got in somehow to the Montreal Comedy Festival.
Huge.
And people assumed because he's 35, 36, and he looks a little older. He probably the way he looks now is probably how he looked when he was 12.
Exactly,
I have a feeling he looked like that early. So people thought, oh, here's this old road comic. We just must have not heard of him. He did well, and that's where he got it. But when you think about all the other stuff that the Boston Comedy, like, the doors that it does open, because there was the Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday and Friday, a comedy record company came down from Toronto to record. And if you wanted to sign, because they have a deal with Sirius. So, I mean, there's all that kind of stuff there. And then plus all the Boston comics, for the Tuesday night for the Tony V thing. We're in the room, and it was like it was a really great networking, but also a really fun event. So now looking forward, you just started your own podcast. I think you guys just launched your first episode.
Yes.
It's YouTube primarily where you can see Reels or No Reels.
You want to see the visual? Yeah, we're putting the audio out on all the iTunes and Spotify. You would probably want to watch us more than listen to us, because it's a lot of visual. A lot of editing that make it more funny than just listening to it. We hope that if you listen to it, there's enough funny things where you're like, oh, I gotta watch now to see, like, and then that will drive you to the YouTube. But YouTube is weird with some kind of copyright things with music and stuff. So a lot of our podcast is called Real or No Reels. REAL is the beginning, which is real, and the emphasis behind that word REAL, real, is we're going to touch on mental health and mental awareness. Not as professionals, Nurse Joe. So we have to put up a disclaimer.
I'm also mentally ill, so it's kind of like, hey, hey,
come on,
crazy Nurse Joe here.
We'll have you as a guest with a big disclaimer. We are not professionals. Tommy deals with his mental issues. I deal with some. Mr. J deals with his. We met over that at open mics, kind of like parking lot talk. Like, oh, you deal with depression. I deal with this. And it ended up being like the first time I met Jay Gillespie, who's Mr. J. He's like our camera guy / third wheel. He was talking in the parking lot. He's like, you know what people don't have is like a grown man thing. Like we have this persona where we can't reach out and ask for help. And I don't want to get too deep and not be funny about this, but we just, as guys, we don't have this thing where we're like, hey man, how you doing? And everyone just says, I'm fine or I'm okay, when you're hiding something. So me and Jay started a friendship where we're like checking in on each other. Hope today's a good day. We met Tommy. Tommy was the same way. So like, we're like, hey, let's have this podcast where like, we're comics being funny, but we're going to kind of kick off a segment of it, the real part where it's like, yeah, how you doing? How you really doing? And we're not afraid to say it, whether we take medications or we go to, therapy sessions, like, but I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. Like some of these things I needed, I went for years without doing it, and it didn't help me. And it's one of those things where when you start doing things that work, you're like, man, why didn't I do this 10 years ago or 20 years ago? So that's like the real part of our podcast, which we'll touch on. And when we launched an intro, kind of like, this is what our podcast is going to be about before episode 1. Some of the people that reached back were like, hey man, that segment about mental health was awesome. And there was guys and females that reached out about like, it's nice of you guys to touch on that. You're going to dig more into it. And then that was like, just between the intro and episode 1, like we have to make this, a certain part of our podcast. So it's always going to be a thing we have called the Mental Minute. And, we started an open mic in Seabrook. It's the Real or No Reelz comedy open mic. And what we do at that open mic is just invite everyone for the hang. And the hang is, we're going to get up and do our 5 minutes of comedy in front of a crowd. But the other part of it is, hey man, how you doing? Come for that. And you don't even have to go up. If you're just having a lonely Monday or a dark Monday and you want to be around a good vibe, come out and be the vibe. Winner's Circle is the same vibe. That mic was so much different than so many mics. I was going to Winner's Circle every Tuesday, only getting up like every 4 or 5 weeks. I was there every single Tuesday for a vibe, like the vibe of friendship, checking in, and that's what we want to do with our mic. So then it's gonna peel off to the podcast as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that this podcast that we do every 2 weeks is actually a mental health check-in from Jacques. Like he sees me struggling. He goes, I got to do this podcast with Joe, or he's going to be on the ledge. He needs somebody to talk.
One of the many things I loved most about Ted Lasso is how, starting with season 2. I mean, if when you go back, if you watch the show 9 times like I did, you can see in the very first episode them laying the breadcrumbs for Ted's, mental health issues. But in season 2, they put the 18-wheeler in the fast lane, put a brick on the accelerator, and just we're not just taking on mental health, we're taking it on in the most toxic environment ever, which is professional sports, and where it's a European football team with people from all over the world, where mental health issues is something you hide in many places. It's something to be shameful for. We had a family member, 10 years ago who went through something, and my mom was upset that, my sister had told like an aunt that this was going on with somebody in the family. She's like, oh, you can't tell people that. And my sister said, if this person had cancer, Mom, you would be on Facebook saying how proud you are, how hard they're fighting it, that they're doing everything they can. Where this family member of ours had reached out for help, my mother thought, oh, well, that's a personal, private thing. And because you want to make it a personal, private thing, nobody knows that you need the help. And everybody, and this is a person in the family who's a funny person, and the last person you would think is really struggling. And so the fact that, you're addressing that, Joe and I, our other co-host Biff, the circle of friends that I have, whether it's these guys in a band I've been in doing comedy with Joe, we tell each other we love each other all the time. You know,
Yeah.
and my sons, and we both have two sons, have grown up with dads who aren't afraid to cry at movies, aren't afraid to, talk about, feelings, and also not afraid to tell your male friends. It's like, dude, you're really important to me and I love you. And but that's not the world you and I, Joe's about 8 years
No,
younger than me.
no,
It's not the world we grew up in. Like,
no. We could go rub some dirt on it. You'll be okay, right?
Yes, yes.
what are you, queer?
I just,
Oh, well, actually, now that you bring it up, I haven't been able to tell you this, but
Right.
yes.
Oh man,
So it's great
different
that
world.
and it's a better world when you have guys who look like us,
Mhm.
not only, reaching out to their friends, but being able to tell people, like, you can tell me these things. We don't have to just be the funny
Yeah.
fart joke guys. You want to pull me
No, no,
aside
no.
and say, hey, this is going sideways. And if it's
Right.
just to listen, there's not a whole heck of a lot of that. So,
Right, right.
and
So
then
what
when
we do before we hit record on our podcast is me, Jay, and Tommy kind of have the camera set up, make sure the audio is good. But before we hit record, we talk like with more than a check-in. We get deep into like how's family and stuff. So that stuff we're not gonna put out there. But at some point, like Jay's like, I don't think the public would want to watch that, but it's like what you just said. It's like heartwarming or to know that someone cares that much, not to just be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm okay. And then not dig into like, I'm okay is not really okay. Right.
right,
That's just like a cover up to like move on to don't ask, you
you
know,
know,
what's, I hate to say it because we all have friends and, I'm not calling anyone out, but you might have a friend that's been your friend for 30 years that doesn't go through the same type of mental thing. So they don't really know what you're dealing with. So when you find, your crew or your circle, I call it the band of misfits.
yeah.
So they kind of get like, hey man, he's going through a dark time. Hey, you're being quiet for 2 days on the text chain. Like, what's going on? Something's up.
mm.
And we call each other out on that. Or I'll just say like, hey, I'm trying to call you. Answer the phone. Oh, I'm having a dark day. I'm like, answer the phone. Even if you just need to listen or
Right.
you just need someone to listen. And no one. A lot of people like back in the day, you wouldn't admit that.
Well, it was about 6 months ago. I noticed that Lloyd Legacy Sharp had gone
Yeah.
45 minutes without posting a self, help meme. And I thought somebody's got to do a wellness check because
Oh
he's
man.
every 20 minutes has a, hey, things are going to be great. Take, these
Oh.
positivity things. And I didn't see something for 45 minutes from him. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, somebody do a wellness check.
I was looking out for
Oh.
you the other, when we were at McHugh's.
Yep.
So I was Jacques when we were at McHugh's. I told Liam, if Jacques stops talking, call 911 because something's wrong. He's obviously in distress. So I'm looking out for you.
Yeah, yeah. No, if you saw me, I try to check in with everybody. So it's hard for me, like even when I host or when I'm put in a spot where I'm kind of like running the room for another promoter, like I just do a check in. Some people, I'm like the host that some people don't like because I want to be, and I say this for this, everyone that goes on stage has their own like green room pregame, and there's like some people that are like, I need a drink before I go up. There's some people that are like, leave me alone. I'm going over my notes before I go up. And I'm just like, so how many minutes you're gonna do this many minutes? When do you want to light? How do you want your intro? And I'm just like I kind of just want to be normal until my name gets called. Like I don't want to think about it. Like I kind of show up knowing like this is gonna be my set. I know I'm doing X amount of minutes tonight. I know I'm going on third, whatever. And obviously things change in the comedy world when you get in the room. And then you got to kind of read the crowd and go, am I going to work clean tonight? Is this a crowd where I can kind of get edgy? But I like to talk until like next on stage is Mystaru, and I know a lot of people don't, and I got to get that out of like, hey, that person needs to be left alone. That person just wants me to check in once, and then they're fine when their set's done, but it's like everyone has that nervousness or anxiety. They deal with it a different way.
Right.
And my way is to just act normal, which isn't normal,
I don't think I'm normal because there's so many times I'll take the bullet, and a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to see, what the vibe in the room is. My thing is like, look, I don't care. Like I'm gonna, I'm not gonna. Plus, I don't want like the comic to go on me before to do, a 5-minute set of bestiality, pedophilia, diarrhea, because that's my 5 minutes, and I don't want it. It's like, oh wait, now I have no, but it is there because there's been so many times where my friend Wayne, it's a completely different thing that we have, but it's in the same sandbox, a certain kind of joke, and it's like. And yeah, Joe was at the show, the one in Manchester a few weeks ago, and I show you the list, and there was like 2 things I had to cross out because I went on like 3rd or 4th. It's like, well, there goes the 23andMe bit. I'm going to take that. Sometimes you can feed off it depending on where they take it.
If he marries a Korean woman, you're screwed.
I'm fucked. I'm just fucked, but yeah, so you host
Think about
shows.
this. Oh, think about this. I have to go on second, say, on a show where you go up and you go rogue for your set. And if the crowd loves it, think of the nervousness that's going to be on me.
Right.
I got to come up and do clean work, and they just loved everything you just said. So, like, I'm like rerouting, like, oh, man, like, they're not going to like, because he just went so rogue and blew the place off. It's like, there's that kind of like nervousness, too, where, like, you're the clean comic, and you might have an opener that is edgy, and then the headliner's edgy, and if a lot of people bought the seats for the headliner, like maybe I'm not the right mix for that crowd, but I can throw like sort of edgy stuff in there, but I don't really write that, so I'm kind of altering some of my stuff to kind of fit the crowd, which I don't know if it comes out. You want to make it sound natural, right? That's right. Like the whole
but then there's some people where Joe and I saw a show at Nick's. This was like a year ago. The host was not good. The opener was, why did this person, like, who let this person in here, let alone get on stage? The next guy got into a controversial and couldn't pivot. Like it was everybody in the room is like, and then
there's some vocal hecklers, like very verbose hecklers, and it's just kind of like,
but that's three in a row. What are you, 30 minutes into a show where things aren't going good at that point?
And then the overweight champ on Instagram, Tim Champa. Champa.
Haven't worked with him yet.
It killed it. And then the headliner, also, so whatever somebody does before you still gotta figure out.
You got to be like a comedy janitor, like, oh, I'm cleaning up the stage now.
Yeah. Well, it's not all like the first guy hit a single, the second guy hit a double, the third guy hit a, you're like, yes, this is just on the ride. Sometimes it's
yeah. How awful.
Sometimes you got to hit the grand slam when there's nobody on base. Somehow.
Well, I've seen how, and let's get back to Tony V. How many crappy people went on just before him? Within 30 seconds, the room forgot about that person, and Tony just, turned the room, whether it's 2 people or 2,000 people, and that's why those guys are legends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Guy's been on stage 20,000 times.
Like, I don't think Steve Bjork ever got off a stage and said, "Well, the crowd was awful tonight." You know what I mean?
No. Dude, Steve Bjork taught me one of the most I hosted a show for him that was a small crowd. None of us did great. None of us bombed, but none of us did great. It got to him, and he just said, listen, whether there's 150 people in a room or 1,000 people in a room or 20 in a room, they all paid the same amount for a ticket, so they all deserve the same show. He went up on stage. He did not use the mic, and he basically said, like, I've watched all the other comics tell jokes to people, or at people, I should say. He goes, you guys are telling jokes at people. I'm going to talk to them. And he went up for 40-something minutes, destroyed the room. They loved him. And at the end, they were walking out. We were kind of like, the green room was kind of like on the exit. And they're like, you guys had a great show. This was awesome. I'm like, they're only saying that because Steve ended it with like the grand finale of fireworks. Like, ours were, a couple duds here and there. Like, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And then I was like, man, he just taught me something without thinking he's teaching me. Like, it was, you watch these guys that are nice like that, and they just like, they give you these little things that are priceless. And I was like, I'll never forget what he just did.
No, and there's been so many times. First of all, he's the first guest on our podcast who realized that Carnival Personnel was a reference to the jerk. So he will always be our favorite guest of all time just because of
The
that.
best.
I was living overseas when my sister said, "Hey, I found your favorite comedian. Next time you come home to visit," because we both like Brian Regan, so I saw him.
Best.
But
Oh, yep.
then when I got into this and I got to do shows with Steve, and Steve after the show was saying, "Hey, this was really good. Can I suggest something?" And I'm like, "Wait, is this happening?" Like my favorite comic is going to throw. And then a couple months later, I work with him again. He says, "Hey, I noticed that you took that to heart. Can I throw something else at you?" And it's just
That's the best.
like feedback. And there's guys out there, and there was another one of these comics who said something. If there's 50 seats set up, but there's only 3 people at the show, you can't be mad at those 3 people. Like you
No,
should be
right.
twice as happy that they can be mad at the 47 empty seats.
Right, right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Steve, like when Steve and those guys give you, they know that, whatever the next wave is, whether it's our group, another group, anyone below them, it's like it's in their best interest to help comedy get better. And it's like their minds just think, like they hear your joke. Like some of the headliners, I won't say their names. If you notice, a lot of headliners don't watch like the opener or the feature act. I've talked to like 3 or 4. They wait outside, and I'm like, at first I was like, they don't really want to be part of the show, or what do they think they're too good? And a lot of them have ended up telling me they're like, we don't watch the comedy because you could have a great premise of a joke that my mind thinks he should have went this way or she should have went this way, or this joke would be better if this, and they don't even want it in their head. I wouldn't say stealing material, but they don't want to like think of a better joke off someone else's premise and then like be good. So guys like Steve that stay in the room,
yeah.
it's not like he's going to use that premise for his own joke. He's going to come up to you and be like, "Hey, do you mind I give you some feedback on something?" And I'm always like, "Yeah, anytime, man. Like good or bad, give it to me."
The
And
two Yeah, the two best things that's happened to me since doing comedy is I told a joke and Steve says, "I wish I wrote that joke." Like that,
oh,
and then about he just taped his special that Joe and I went to with my sister who loves the guy too.
yeah,
And he calls 2 or 3 days before the special. When we end the podcast, we usually go out of one of my band songs. And he called and he said, "Hey, can I use that song as my walk-on music when I shoot my special?" I didn't call my wife. I called Joe and I said goodbye because I said, "I'm going to go walk outside and wait for the city bus to go by. And I'm going to jump in front of it because
Another broken promise from Jacques, you know?
well, yeah.
my favorite comic just asked me if he can use my song for his special. Like, yeah, I've touched the sun. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. I want to go out on a
That's
high
awesome.
note.
Yes, that's a high note.
But then you have guys who are happy to give advice. But one of my favorite quotes about giving advice was Dave Radican, who said, "I'll give anybody advice. I'm happy to mentor anybody. I'm also happy if they don't take the advice because it frees me up from having to help you later on."
Oh, right, yeah. Yep.
So, but there's so many of those guys who give the advice. Okay, so we're going to let you go, but what's happening in the next 6 months, year? Where do you think you are with comedy? Where do you think Reels is going to be?
Well, Rios is going to try to get an episode out every 2 weeks. We have a guest coming this week who's a headliner from Detroit. He's a cruise ship comic as well. Probably won't touch on mental health with that. That's just more going to be a comedy podcast, and we'll try to edit it down to like a 30-minute thing. And then after that, I don't know where Reels is going to be. Like like part of it is like we want the content. The other part of it is, man, it's fun. It's like it's just 3 of us hanging out. Like you said, it's you have your studio, the mics are set up, the lights are on, we're joking around. It's like the way like Jay Gillespie put it, he's like, "Man, we talk at midnight in a parking lot after a show. That should be recorded. Like if we could just have like sticks, like just like um, the favorite part of Joe, I don't know, like if you guys take this to heart, but like to get in a car and carpool to a show, obviously you want everyone in the car, whether it's 3 or 4 of you, to do very well so you can all drive home happy. But there's a little part of you that wants someone to not do so great for that ride home because the comic in you is like, oh, like if it's Jock, like you're gonna have a long ride home, brother. Like
The
so,
material,
like
there's so much
yeah.
material
So
there.
this week, there's three of us carpooling up to Brattleboro, Vermont. So it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes each way to do a theater up there. I hope I'm not the butt of the joke on the ride home because it's gonna be a long ride. But that's some of the best thing. Tony V's class, he actually said, you're gonna love the stage time, but the car rides, the travel, and the camaraderie with the circle you make are like the best
Oh,
part. He goes, and he said that's why he goes, I would never change it. He goes, if I stayed like in a professional job, maybe I'd be retired by now. He goes, but I would never have the stories or the friends he has or the circle. Like, the guy was on shows with Robin Williams and Bobcat stuff. It's like if he was a teacher or a professor, he would have never
you wouldn't
had
get
any of
that.
that stuff.
I
Yeah.
I I did a Smitty Sanford with McHugh a month ago, and I met him in Portsmouth, and we drove the rest of the way. He was telling me these. He told me three Lewis Black stories that truly brought tears to my eyes. Not funny, like
Oh,
humanity. Like these are
okay.
things that Lewis Black did for comics that don't make the headlines that you wouldn't see. And
Right.
and Jim, who's been on the podcast, I'm like, I haven't even told Joe these stories because I'm like, I want Jim to come back and just tell these. I would have never known those stories, but we had
No.
2 hours each way, just us, no radio talking comedy. But when he started talking about, because he was an opener for him, and he told me how they met, like how it evolved, and they were funny stories. But there were these moments where I'm like, I never thought a Lewis Black story would have me verklempt.
Right. No, because you don't see that part of him. Like the Jim McHugh, or last night we worked with Joey Carroll. Like Joey Carroll and Jim McHugh have been overseas in bulletproof vests performing for the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan with these, they have to take escorted helicopter rides to do like who would have ever thought comedy would take you to that side of the world and you would be able to perform for, these these troops. I'm a veteran myself, so like that those things go wavelengths for me. Like I can listen to those stories forever.
What now? Just to be clear, like you're a veteran, and we're not talking rap battles. We're talking actual.
No,
Okay, all
army,
right.
army,
Just
military
wondering.
army. Yeah,
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 thank you.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, no
Um,
one.
and about comedy, it's like where you hoping to be. And a year from now, are you bothering to take our phone call, or are your people fielding the calls
Oh, for
before
sure.
Joe and I get through?
No, no. I hope to just be a good feature. I maybe I'm different because I'm still taking the Tony V, the old school, earn your keep type of thing. I don't think I'm ever gonna blow up on social media. I just don't have that. I'm 49, so I'm probably not in the age group for the social media thing. I don't play a character, so unless I think of a character, maybe I'll bring back like a masked guy that is 49 that break dances and does, some kind of retro stuff without, blowing my knees out and having to call Nurse Joe in. But if I can get to so I'm always booked for 20 to 30-minute spots to be a feature and then just grind at that for 2 or 3 years and, and just keep learning the business. Learning the business and building your network is huge. And like guys like Jim McHugh are huge for that. I work for Rob Steen. He's huge for that. Like I think like when they book a younger comic, they're just like, thank you. And then they probably get bothered by me because I'm asking, I'm learning the venues, I'm learning the business side of it. I'm learning how like they run things and take the good from all of them, because there's bad stories too. So you got to learn from those. I don't want to run shows. I just want to be booked on shows and kind of just travel. Working with a different group of comics is like that's what other people don't think. They see like 3 or 4 comics at a show, and at the end they're like, "Oh, how often do you guys work together? You were funny." I'm like, we've never worked together before in our lives,
Right. But
It's
it
like
is.
the
You
no, I'll
don't
say like
know.
the promoter put us on a show. It's like you're the opener, you're the feature, you're the headliner, you're the host. It's like okay, I'm going to work with 3 people I never met before, and you see their names, you just don't, you never worked with them before.
Well, it's funny because we touched on that with the Casey episode where he's saying, if you went to the Rat on a Friday night in like '93, you knew there's 4 different bands, but they're going to be metal-ish, one might be, harder metal than this, or the Middle East Cafe would be a grunge place. But comedy, you could have a crowd work guy. You could have the next guy up as a prop comic. The next guy up as Anthony Jeselnik. The next guy, could be, horrible. It could be worse. It could be me. And so you just don't know who's going to, be in that. Yeah. But then you walk out of the room, and it's like, I'm friends with 50 people that a year ago I didn't know, and right. and I wouldn't have crossed paths because they're in this industry, or they're this, or they don't have kids, so that it's like I'm never going to bond with this guy because he doesn't know about the nightmares of taking two kids to different sporting events and different. But you do comedy with them, and you find, oh man, this guy's funny. Oh, he has the same touch point about this subject, and it's been such. People our age, late 40s, mid 50s, you don't make new friends. Like you don't make friends outside of, if you switch jobs or something like that.
Oh, right.
And now there's 50 people that, gosh, I can't. Oh, they're up in Manchester. I don't have anything Saturday. I'm gonna go see what Lauren Sims. She just said she had some new stuff. Oh, Tommy. I haven't seen Tommy Wires in like 6 months, and I know. Oh, wait, this guy Ian's on that. Okay, that's worth a half-hour drive because I don't have obligations that night, and it's
right.
It's
right.
super fun.
Dude, being seen and being around the scene is like a big thing too. Like when I was doing Tony's classes on Wednesday night in Boston. I'm from Hampton, so it's an hour ride. All I knew, because when you're new, you don't want your friends and family to see you. So like, they didn't even know I was doing comedy besides my wife. I was driving in with like 23 to 25-year-olds that were college kids or just out of college taking these classes. And we were hitting up like, open mics in Boston. So I was making the ride the one night a week for class plus 2 or 3 nights a week, like to be on at 11 o'clock at a bar that half the bar don't even know there's comedy, and I'm the 17th comic up to do 4 minutes, and then I'm driving home at like 11 going, man, like Tony V told me this is true, but it's like, do I really want to put this much time and effort and stuff? I have work in the morning, I'm driving home late, and then fast forward to other stuff that he came true, and then me and you were on Jim McHugh's 3-year anniversary show that was like a showcase with whatever there was, 11, 12 of us, we all did good, almost a sold out crowd, or pretty much a sold out crowd. And like that was like I would have never guessed I would have been on that show 2 years ago or 3 years ago in these open mics. And like to watch 15 or whatever, say 13 of us do 13 types of comedy and the crowd laugh at all of us is like, that's what you do this for, because you don't get those every time you go out.
No, well, in the same thing when I started, I didn't want anybody to know I was doing this. So I just, let my wife to believe I was having an affair, because that'd be, it's like, I think that'd be more forgivable than I'm telling my stupid
more
jokes.
Explainable.
More plausible. You're not funny. But this was everything I hoped for having you on, man.
Thanks, man.
And as you'll find out, the best part about the stand-up thing is the hanging out. The best part about having these podcasts is I know more about you now than I might have 10 shows hanging out for a half hour after.
Yeah. Sweet.
You know, and you get to know people, so it is. It's or the bad thing is you get to know people. It's like, oh fuck, now, how do I get this guy out of my life?
Yeah, it's like, I'm stuck. You're stuck with me now. Yeah.
But this was exciting. We look forward to watching the show blow up, you blow up, and hopefully we're doing a best of Boston comedy showcase up at a Smitty soon together, my friend.
Oh, dude, I love those theaters.
Joe,
you got any thoughts?
A couple plugs. Where can people? Mr. Rue, where can people find you? If where do you have a string of socials or dates coming up?
Yeah. So my Facebook will always have a picture that's pinned with all my shows. I'm booked, not booked, but I have shows all the way up to August and October, I think, right now. That's on Facebook, Mystaru. I'm on Instagram as Mystaru. That's Mystaru. And then our podcast is Reel or No Reelz. And it's REAL or No Reelz, REELZ. That's everywhere. We have our own same, all social media plus website for the Real and No Reels podcast. Like I said, only one episode up now. We usually get 2 or 3 like 1-minute clips as kind of like feeder, funny clips that feed you into the episode. But we're trying to do one episode every 2 weeks at this point. So,
And
what
your
episode
MySpace
am I in?
page is
MySpace / Mystaru. Reverb Nation as well, man. I go back. I don't
Excellent.
have anymore
So-
is an AOL email account.
Oh yeah, I still have AIM. I'm holding on to it. I don't care.
There you go.
But-
There you go.
So Mr. Roux, thanks for coming on. Jacques,
Thank you.
so just to wrap up what I learned about comedy is like you can be 10% funny, and then it's like 80% is doing the work, and 50% is showing up, and then like 30% is getting a ride, and then I think there's like
Taxes.
Yes, right. Then there's capital gains taxes on the comedy, and there's a ratio of anal jokes to bestiality jokes. I forget what the mix is, but
Don't forget, he said he had 50 friends from that.
oh right. Then you got to
50 friends.
50 friends over the course of 2 years, and then there will be a worksheet handed out at the with this podcast. So yes, Jacques. Mr. Roux, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you guys. You guys are the best.
And Jacques, don't forget,
John raped the on the road today. He made tired house bastards pay with a gun that his mother keeps to scare the strong out. Junkie creeps away. He's a low, lovely little boy. The whole lot of lovely little toys. And everyone says that boy's okay. Puppet of tales and dissonance. Baby likes coke and backyard sense. Making money with it, landlord's gasoline. Saving all the little fritters with Vaseline. Little Mary goes to Catholic school, where she makes the priests and the dropouts drool. Short skirts with white socks, screaming Mary goes round and around the block. She's a low, lovely little girl, with a head full of lovely little curls. And everyone says that girl's okay. Puppet of tales and dissonance. Baby likes coke and backyard sense. Making money with the landlord's gasoline. Saving all the little critters with Vaseline. Yeah, Rembrandt jeans, Rembrandt jeans, Rembrandt jeans, Rembrandt jeans. And the kids on the corner are all insane. Dissonance. Baby likes coke and backyard sense. Making money with your landlord's gasoline. Saving all your little friends with Vaseline. Yeah.